So, a few months ago, I was working on this painting that incorporated a lot of different ideas that I had been working on with in the context of this sort of space surrealism in gouache painting. And for those of you who don't know, gouache painting is essentially the usage of a type of paint that's almost like a hybrid between acrylic that's chalky and watercolor. So the cool thing about this is that this was an interesting way I was doing this because I had moved on from doing more watercolor based paintings and I started layering more and more of this chalky pigment onto these paintings to give it a more oil look to it. So the good thing about this was that it allowed me to cover up a lot of mistakes in the paintings that I was making, and it also allowed me to explore some new ideas that I'd like to share with you and give people a better perspective on. Since this footage is months old, I'll kind of go over it and show you the necessary applications and details that I've infused in this piece and kind of taught myself within the context of fixing traditional paintings, the steps I take to make them better. And I think one of the things that I really want people to understand is that this is something that isn't really something that you should worry about if you're trying to get everything correct. And the purpose of what you're making isn't realism. So, in the context of making something very accurate and close to real life as possible, this is something that I feel is necessary only in the context that you're trying to initiate a response from someone where they're looking at a piece that you're making and it's reflecting back to them this idea that is drawing them into a world that you are insisting is real. So, starting off with this piece, when we look at it, we can see that the nature of this splotch right here is fairly prevalent. You can actually see it from different angles, which for me is something that, after looking at this for some time now, I've noticed. So, keeping that in mind, I think the best course of action here is to go ahead and start doing a large layer over it. I'm also going to be improving some of the features around the hands, around the armpits, places that I feel need a little more work other than just this splotch. Apart from the stars, or with the stars themselves, I think they work, and I'm not going to really touch those because they give a pretty decent illusion of there being more stars than there actually are in the dress. So with the hand, I'm kind of reproportioning it, make it a little more realistic, less bumpy, with the back part covering over with a layer of chalky white pigment to give that a base coat. And as I go around, I'm going to be filling this in with some darker pigments, some more skin tones. And this is because when I start doing this, I can actually layer over these elements with some lighter tones and mix them more easily rather than going in and painting over them as little increments. So the blending with larger portions of two colors is easier and looks better than going in and doing that. So it was a tedious process to go ahead and do that, but it did pay off in respects to the realism, the naturalism of the piece. And so it can be tricky just to maintain these tones within these areas and keep them smooth, but I think I did a pretty good job. And again, with the hands, these are very tricky. They still need to be worked on, in my opinion, but I think that they represent pretty well what I was going for. I wanted to make this as realistic as possible, and I think overall completing everything as much as I can in terms of those little fixes, I think greatly improve the nature of this. So it's definitely a success. And everything with the hands and that still work. So overall, it's something I want to notice more often, and I'm glad I understand better of how I can improve something like this. And so, yes, this is the final version that, after looking at it for a few months, it really comes across as something that I've learned a lot from, especially when combining surrealistic elements within pieces. Because if you look at work by, Salvador Dali, he did a lot of paintings that incorporated very loose, abstract shapes that worked incredibly well in realistic, semi-naturalistic environments that he created. So taking from those ideas, it's incredibly important for at least my sake and people who embody this style in their work, that they think about these elements and how not everything needs to be perfect in every sense of the word, as far as the way in which you go about trying to make something as realistic as possible. Because when you do that, you are sometimes going in a direction where you are better off having critique from other people come in and help influence certain aspects of what you do. And if you don't do that, then it can be tougher to embody something that people can look at and sort of naturally be connected to. And as far as what I do goes, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. Nothing I do is solidified in the sense that the idea is always perfect. It's always this track I'm walking down and needing to take every bit of thought that comes to me and use it to keep on steadily experimenting. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.